The people who orchestrate violence in this country are Zanu. People fought so that we can have freedom. This is what it calls for this moment. This generation must rise up and also demand freedom. Freedom is not going to be given on a silver platter. Zimbabweans must now begin to organize, to mobilize, and resist dictatorship.
This is Open Parley Live.
Hello and a warm welcome to Open Parley Live here on Open Parley. My name is Lynette Manzini. Thank you very much for joining us. In today's conversation, we are going to be talking about a political and a legal issue that has been debated in Zimbabwe since the beginning of this year. Constitutional Amendment Bill number 3. While this bill seeks to amend a lot of things, in this conversation, we are going to focus on what it seeks to do for the presidency, term limits extension, and also taking away the citizens' right to vote for their president and limiting it to just the MPs in parliament. Joining me to discuss this topic today is pro-democracy activist Stephen Chuma. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Lynette. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. I might be smiling, you are smiling too, but we meet at a time where Zimbabwe is at a crossroads. People are having conversations about the Constitutional Amendment Bill. Maybe just starting from the top, we have Cabinet approving principles of this bill. We have the Auditor General going through the bill. We have it being gazetted. We have the 90-day period to have conversations about this bill. But during this time, people against this bill were attacked. We saw Love Mo Madukus of this world being attacked. We saw Tendai Biti being arrested. I want you to paint a picture for our viewers. Why are you against this bill?
Firstly, we must understand that we are a creature of the Constitution. Zimbabwe is a creature of the Constitution. So this bill, it violates constitutional provisions. Yet our concern on Section 2 is very clear about the supremacy of the Constitution, that the Constitution is the supreme law of the country. And it is shocking that the people who are pushing this bill, to be precise, Emmerson Mnangagwa himself, he claims to be a constitutionalist, but is the one who is at the forefront of violating the very same concern that we all participated in 2013 to make sure that we, for the first time in Zimbabwe, a home-made constitution, because all along we've been using the 1979 Lancaster Constitution. But the people of Zimbabwe, in their various backgrounds, religion, etc., they gathered together in the streets, they gathered together in the valleys, in rural areas, in farms, in towns, to make sure that we have this important document that we call the Constitution of Zimbabwe, which Emmerson Mnangagwa and the ZANU-PF want to shred apart. So it's a constitutional crisis that is being brought by ZANU-PF. So the onus is now upon Zimbabweans, citizens, progressive ones, to come together despite differences.
Before we go to the call to action, I want us to focus on the one of the provisions that talks about extending the term limits from 5 years to 7 years. And the people who are supporting this bill say, is to ensure that a president is able to finish all the projects. It's good for continuity. They also say that for, I think, peace, if I might say, because there's a lot of violence every time a president is elected.
You see, Lynette, Zimbabwe, or let me say Zimbabweans, have been subjected to violence since independence. And we know who are the archbishops of violence. We know who are behind the violence that we see. We talk about the likes of Mone Ncube, who was killed at a Triple C rally in 2022. We talk about Bishop Masaya, who was killed during the runoff election in Mavuku Tafara. We talk about recently Professor Love Mo Maduku, who was beaten by Zanu PF thugs at his own office while the police were there. So we know that the people who orchestrate violence in this country are Zanu PF. So for them to now say the elections cause violence when they are the very same people that are causing violence, it defies logic. It only shows that we are dealing with people who are just afraid of elections. I will give you examples of countries that have flourished in this world, but they have elections regularly. Talk about the UK, talk about America, one of the best democracies and one of the most developed countries. They do elections after every 4 years. So to say we need more time so that we can develop this nation is just mendacious. Zanu-PF have been in power since 1980, and on Saturday it will mark 46 years of independence. But what have they done in 46 years that they now demand 2 more years so that they can improve this country? We know that the very same people who are responsible for all the destruction that we see, be it socially, be it economically, be it politically, is Zanu-PF. So for them to demand an extra 2 more years is to subject the people of Zimbabwe to one of the most satanic way of survival. We know that democracy tells us that we must have elections every time. For the reason why we must have elections every time or regularly is that we are able to choose our best candidates, we are able to choose better leaders. But when we say...
But are we able to do that in this country anyway? Because, you know, the opposition is always complaining about elections not being free and fair. So doing it every 5 years, does it even matter?
So now, instead of not doing elections, what we must be pushing is for this country to have free and fair elections. Okay, because elections have not been free and have not been free and fair, let's abolish them altogether. But what we must be pushing it right now is to say, let's have reforms in the issues to do with the elections. Let's have a bill that seeks to reform the issue of how elections are being handled in this country.
But Zanu-PF will never lead such a bill. It will have to come from the opposition, but we haven't seen that happening.
That is the reason why I've said before that for the first time, Zimbabweans must now come together and make sure that they resist this bill. And after resisting this bill, they must make sure that they push for electoral reforms. And that can only be done when people are united, when people who want this country, we have Zimbabwe at heart, are pulling in the same direction. This is the call that we are trying to say. All the people who are against this bill, let's unite. All the people who believe in the independence of Zimbabwe, I'm talking about the real independence here, because we know that when people went to war during the liberation struggle, one of the main reasons that they went to war for was 1 man, 1 vote, which this dictatorship of Emerson Mnangagwa is seeking to take away from us. This is why the likes of Tongo Gara, the likes of Herbert Chitepo died, because they went to war against the Smith regime, which wanted only a few minority to choose leaders. This is exactly what Emerson Mnangagwa is trying to do. He wants a few people in parliament to choose leaders for us.
Before we move on to the few people in parliament, I still want us to dwell on the extension. I keep referring to this because I've heard a lot of Zanu-PF activists, you know, buttressing this point to such a point that, you know, some people are thinking, you know, I think this is a good idea. I was in one Twitter space and someone was talking about how, you know, they have witnessed violence through every election, like you rightfully say, and you also say it was unleashed by Zanu-PF. But it means that there are less people going through violence, less people dying if we extend, you know, if we extend the term.
Actually, on contrary, it means if we do not do elections, more people will die, because people who do not care about this country will continue running this country. And what it means is that our hospitals will continue to crumble down. What it means that our roads will continue to have more potholes and more accidents. So more people are going to die if we keep on having this government which has a carefree attitude when it comes to issues of development, which has a carefree attitude when it comes to respect of human rights. So we must have elections so that we have a people-elected government, not a government that was brought in by the coup of 2017. So we need a government that comes from the people, and a government that comes from the people is going to respect the aspirations of Zimbabweans. That's why they kill willingly. That's why they abduct. That's why they put people in pretrial detention. This is why the likes of Emmanuel Stima right now, as I'm speaking, has been taken yesterday. What is his crime? Opposing that bill. This is why, as I'm speaking right now, Mazibabwe Shantuko is wallowing at Harare Mandi prison. What is his crime? Distributing flyers to say, no, we don't need this bill. So we cannot continue with this kind of a government. It's like to say, we do not want people to die in 1979, so Ian Smith can continue. People were dying in Chuma, but people fought so that we can have freedom. This is what it calls for this moment. This generation must rise up and also demand freedom. Freedom is not going to be given on a silver platter. We have to fight for it.
But somebody's got to lead the struggle. But in case you're just joining us, you are tuned into Open Pali Live. My name is Lynette Manzini. Thank you very much for joining us. In today's conversation, we're talking about Constitutional Amendment Bill number 3, very much debated political and legal issue in Zimbabwe. And joining me to discuss this topic is pro-democracy activist Stephen Chuma. Back to you. And now we want to focus on the responsibility of voting. I remember in the last election, that was 2023, I was actually working, and I still got a chance to go and vote for, my MP of my choice, the councillor of my choice, and the president of my choice. But this bill seeks to take away my right to vote for a president and just limit it to the members of parliament. We've seen how people are not happy about how their MPs are representing them. And then to think they are going to make a decision for me, to vote for a president of my choice. Why are you against this yourself?
As we talk today, yesterday we had an opposition MP, I would say opposition in courts. One is Susan Matsunga. The people of Budiriro.
Is she not crossed over?
The people of Budiriro North elected that one on opposition ticket. But just a few years down the line, the same person is now chanting ZANU-PF slogans. This is the tragedy that we're afraid of, to say, let's only have MPs electing the president, because the very same people can easily collude with the dictator to sell the souls of millions of Zimbabweans. So the issue of parliamentary system, it is not going to reverse the issue of one man, one vote, like what I've said. And it is also, in this case, where we have seen people being given a cup of rice to vote for the ruling party. What more about a handful of MPs? It simply means that ZANU-PF will have their work cut short in terms of vote buying. They will simply go and buy those few MPs so that they can endorse a dictatorship.
You bring up a very interesting issue. You talk about crossing over. Someone is elected as an MP on an opposition ticket and then crosses over and starts to sing all praises. I actually watched the video this morning where she was talking about how Emerson Mnangagwa is, the best, but she was against him in a not so distant future. So don't you think that the problem is with the opposition that selects MPs, maybe that don't really represent the people? Because if maybe if the opposition went through a meticulous verification, if I can steal Mutuli Nguve's words, maybe, we wouldn't be going through this crossover issue.
Actually,
or is it a money issue?
Besides it being a money issue, but we must also understand the political situation of this country. To say what really happened to be where we are, we must understand that ZANU-PF, through Senghor Chavang, they captured the opposition and they made sure that the authentic voices of the people are recorded from parliament. We have so many of opposition MPs who were genuine representatives of the people who were recorded from parliament and were only replaced by stooges who support ZANU-PF. So this is why we are having this problem of MPs or purported MPs of opposition now singing praise for ZANU-PF. What that means is that the genuine representatives of the people have been recalled from parliament. That's why you see the likes of Fadzai Maere said, no, that thing is now a poised chalice, meaning parliament. They can no longer participate in it. Then they withdrew themselves from parliament because parliament, as it stands, is a poison chalice. To respect or represent the will of the ordinary citizens of Zimbabwe. So I think I've answered your question.
And now I think we recently had public hearings. Public hearings were held. I mean, after it was gazetted, the bill was gazetted, and I think we had just 4 days. What do you think about having just 4 days to discuss an issue that's going to affect how the country is run?
The concern is very clear, especially at the issue of at hand, that when you want to change the concern to lengthen the terms of office of the president, what it means is that it has to be subjected to the people who made the concern. We need a referendum on this one. And Emerson Mnangagwa claims to be a lawyer, which means he knows these things. So, yes, public hearings, they were supposed to be public, but unfortunately they turned out to be Zanu-PF mini rallies because, because the ordinary citizens were being blocked from airing their views. We saw it with the human rights lawyer Douglas Cotter recently at the Harare hearing, where his phone was taken, and in other centers we also saw a lot of ordinary citizens being blocked from giving their contributions. It was like something which has been choreographed to say we only have Zanu-PF people speaking at that in those hearings. So in the end, it turned out not to be public hearings, but Zanu-PF rallies. So to speak in truth, we did not have public hearings, but we had the Zanu-PF rallies which were disguised as public hearings.
Which were disguised. You keep saying ordinary citizens. What do you mean by ordinary citizens?
By ordinary citizens, we mean ordinary Zimbabweans. People like, if you go outside, you see people selling in the streets, selling tomatoes, selling airtime. If you go in the farms, you see people there. These are the people that constitute the majority of Zimbabwe, not people who belong to Zanu-PF only. Because what we saw in these hearings, like in Chitungwiza where I stay, it was clear that only people from Zanu-PF, non-Zanu-PF members, were the ones that were picked in these hearings, whilst other people who were not known to belong to Zanu-PF were not being picked. So this is why we're saying those hearings were just a drama that was happening. There was nothing in terms of it being public. So the people that were being picked at these hearings are Zanu-PF supporters.
So it's like you were just going to a hearing, but it was already choreographed. We're going to pick so and so, and these ones we're going to ignore them.
Yes, this is the reason why you saw that people who were not Zanu-PF members or people who were known to be opposing that bill, some of them were being beaten and some of them were being denied chance to speak. So you can't call that a public hearing. A public hearing must involve all citizens, despite their political parties and their political affiliation. This is what we expect from a public hearing.
A lot of people against this bill and pro-democracy activists talk about the referendum being the decision, being the platform to make where we get the decision of whether we extend the term limits. But Zanu-PF is saying we don't need to use that. How then do we deal with such an issue? Because Zanu-PF is saying, no, we can go ahead, and pro-democracy activists are saying, no, the referendum is supposed to be used. What action are you taking? Can this be resolved?
The issues that we are dealing with a dictatorship, if we understand that we are dealing with a dictatorship, then it will answer your question as to why Zanu-PF is refusing to go to a referendum.
But the law is the law.
Because the law is clear. Yes, I'm agreeing with you. The law is clear that for this amendment to happen, we need to go to the referendum. But Zanu-PF, knowing that they do not come from the people, knowing that they are a product of the 2017 coup, they are afraid of the citizens. This is why even when you go back to the 2023 elections, even SADC was very clear that the elections that were done were sham because they did not meet the standards that we expect of elections. So Zanu-PF knows these things, that a referendum is like a mini election, and the people of Zimbabwe are going to speak against the bill. So they are afraid. That is why they these so-called public hearings, because they will simply pick 4 or 5 people in a room with the 1,000 people. Then they say the people in Chitungwiza have said that they want the bill. So they know that a referendum is like each and every one of us in our millions voting to decide if you want this bill or not. So they know that the people of Zimbabwe, they've rejected them a long time ago, even during Morgan Tsvangirai's time.
And whatever happened to approaching the courts? Because we are agreeing that the law is the law. And what about approaching the courts?
I'm happy that the people right now who have since done that. I've seen the issue of 4 veterans who are challenging this bill, and they're being represented by Professor Alav Momaduku, and then I'm sure the issue is going to be heard in the Constitutional Court on 20 May, which is next month, which is a positive. But be that as it may be, we know that some of us lost confidence in these courts because they seem to be captured. There is a lot of illegalities that has been happening in this country, including the first amendment of the Constitution, Amendment number 1. Mind you, this is Amendment number 3. So there was Amendment number 1, Amendment number 2. And from my side, from my point of view, I think Amendment number 1 and Amendment number 2 were making way for amendment number 3. Because when you look at it, it gave Emmerson Mnangagwa the powers to appoint the judges. So it's clear that Emmerson Mnangagwa went on and appoint a judge like Malaba who had reached the retirement age and even extended the retirement age. So this is where our problems began. So even when Malaba retires on 20 May, was going to retire on 20 May if I'm not mistaken, it means that Emmerson Mnangagwa again is going to choose a ZANU-PF judge. They call them revolutionary judges. So he's going to choose a ZANU-PF judge. So we have a captured judiciary. This is why you see opposite members, even on slightest of issues, they are thrown behind bars in pre-trial detention. Even when, as I'm speaking on this platform, you may hear that in the next few days, they've arrested me. So this is the situation.
Certainly hope, we hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah, we hope so. So this is the situation that we have in Zimbabwe, where we have citizens' rights being trampled upon willy-nilly. Then the judiciary, which is expected under the principle of separation of powers, to be an arbiter to protect citizens. It looks like on paper, it has been, on paper in practice, it looks like it has been captured also. This is why you see, for example, with an issue of Prophet Magaya of rape. He was arrested well after Mazibabayo Shanduku was arrested, but he was granted bail. On a serious and grave crime like rape, he was granted bail. Then we have somebody who is distributing flyers in Harare, and up to now is 7 months in pre-trial detention. What does that tell you? It tells you that the judiciary, which is supposed also to protect citizens, it seems to have been captured by the ruling party.
As we round up this program, what's left for the citizens? What can they do? Because as I've been speaking to you, paint this gloomy picture. We've got a dictatorship. We have a captured judiciary. You know, the playing field is not even. We've seen how violence has been unleashed. What do the citizens do?
It's a very good question. What needs to be done? It has been asked a long time ago by Lenin. Zimbabwe at this moment, what they should do is to come together and make sure that they resist this oppression. They must not expect a messiah from somewhere to come and take away all their problems. Zimbabweans must now begin to organize, to mobilize and resist dictatorship. Because we've seen it in the past in Zimbabwe. People went to the liberation struggle to fight the dictatorship of Ian Smith, even against Robert Mugabe. Yes, he was removed by the coup, but millions of Zimbabweans marched in the streets of Harare to make sure that he's gone. So we can equally do the same to this current regime, because we know that they are not the best that we must have as Zimbabweans. And it is upon us in our diversity to make sure that this regime is gone forever, and we have a people elected government that is going to respect rights and values of our people. Not this one which butchers people, not this one which arrests people, not this one which take away our rights. We need a pro-people government, and that can be done by citizens coming together and make sure that they form a solid movement which is going to remove this dictatorship.
On that note, I'd like to thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Lynette.
So there you have it, viewers. That was a pro-democracy activist, Stephen Chuma, and he was just talking to us about the reasons he's against Constitutional Amendment Bill number 3, and also giving Zimbabweans advice on what to do to resist this bill. So until next time, my name is Lynette Manzini. Goodbye.
This is Open Parley Live.